morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Hope you're all fit and well. You will not believe the time that Dan Cullen was here this morning. He was here saying, "Good morning. Hope you're not letting the dog out," which I did yesterday. That was at 3:35 this morning. A little bit advanced, I would say. And also advanced was Alex Latham, who was here far more reasonable, 3 minutes before the show started. Morning, Alex. Good of you to join us. Um, Obviously, sad day today for music lovers and Brits, I think, with the sad news that Mr. Ozzy Osbourne has stepped off this mortal coil. I don't know about you, kind of thought he might, well, either live forever or the fact that he'd actually died but done a deal with the devil and had popped back and decided never to go again. Given his lifestyle, 76 years old, not a bad innings. And quite a legacy. I mean, obviously, musically, one of the founding fathers of heavy metal and everything else. I think more importantly, one of the great British eccentrics. How many of those have we got left? Keith Richards, maybe. After that, not a great deal. Not a great deal. So, yeah, sad news. Rest in peace. Rest in power, Mr. Ozzy Osbourne. Haribo Starmix just joined us over on Instagram, as has Eraser Ian and Adam Malik as well. Loads of people. Cummins Power has just joined us over there as well. Loads of people. Chris Ford has just pitched up in the normal chat. Morning, Chris. How are you doing? Morning, all. Happy Hump Day. Yeah, happy Hump Day, indeed. What I will say is there's just this show and two more quite like it, and then I'm off. However, I spent a large part of yesterday making ready. Let me show you something very quickly. There you are. Let me take me. I don't know if you could see that. That was called Postcard from the High Seas. That's actually the ship that I'm going on. That is the Sun Princess, which is going to be my home for 11 nights, 12 nights, something like that, in about a week's time. While I'm away, I've already configured 3 of 6 much shorter shows. The first 5 will be a recap from, behind the scenes of the European Demolition Association study tour from Italy. I wish I could tell you what order they come in, but I can't. And then there's a final one, which is an exclusive interview about a transatlantic joint venture in the world of explosive demolition, which I filmed in Venice, and I've been sitting on ever since. So yes, next week I won't. Obviously, I won't be here, or the week after, but there will be stuff dropping. There'll be stuff dropping as we go along. So let's have a look. Alex Latham says, currently, me and one of my IPAF instructors, delegates from Somerset Plant Training, are watching today during a break. Fantastic stuff. Well, good morning to you, whoever the IPAF instructor is. Mick says, morning all. Noisy day at the Britannia Hotel on the island yesterday. Very nice too. Jim Turner is here as well. Mark Whiting is here, and Ken Hatcher with his latest weather report. He, in many ways, he is like the Ulrika Johnson of the show. Sure, very quickly, very quickly. I don't think I've ever revealed this before. It's a story that I do tell from time to time. Back in let me think, would have been the early 1990s. I was doing some PR work for the mighty Caterpillar, which included their power system, so their engines and generators and that kind of thing. And one of the jobs that I was expected to do was to go along to the London Boat Show at Earl's Court, if I remember rightly. And they had a stand there and so on down the line. Well, I had to be there early doors to be on duty for when the press arrived. And the show was officially opened by Ulrika Johnson. She was, big name at the time, very attractive and everything else. And she was the person cutting the ribbon, declaring the London Boat Show open. So I was invited to the opening and more than happy to attend, even more so that Ulrika Johnson was actually doing the opening. I then followed the crowd, including Ulrika Johnson, to a bar. This is about 8 o'clock in the morning, where Ulrika Johnson was handed a pint of Guinness and some oysters. She ate all the oysters and then downed a pint of Guinness in one. What a woman. What a woman. Starmix, Haribo Starmix rather says, can't catch you tomorrow because I'm going on holiday. Not a problem at all, but thank you for the advance warning. What I will tell you is this time next week, I'll be doing exactly the same. Dan Cullen is back, 3.5, no, 6.5 hours after he was here before. He says, "Good morning, guys," and Chris Ford. Um, the 5 Ps comes to mind, applies as much to holidays as to work. The 5 Ps. You may need to enlighten me on the 5 Ps, Chris. I'm already demob happy. My brain is running at half speed. Um, very, very quickly, I don't know if you can see this. I'm wearing one of Steve Williamson's very fine T-shirts. It's got Steve's name on the back, but I can't show you that because it's on the back. Um, I was looking at Steve's, I think it was his LinkedIn yesterday, and he showed off a photograph or a brief video of a machine that I must admit I've not heard of one in years. And I thought, "Do you know what? Just as we're getting demob happy, as we're winding down towards Friday, and obviously towards a 2 week break, I thought I'd dig a little deeper. I'm not bored with Bobcat. I'm not jaded by JCB, but I do think that some of the bigger manufacturers do get a bit more of our airtime on this show than some others. So today's show is kind of dedicated to the unsung heroes, including a few names that you may not have heard before. So stick around for that. Dan Cullen says a pint of Guinness ain't easy to down. It is not. I have I ever split the G? I have split the G from time to time, but it is one mighty mouthful. Mick, thank you very much indeed. Perfect planning prevents piss poor performance. Thank you very much indeed. That's actually 6 Ps, but listen, who am I to be a pedant this time in the morning? So shall we start? Because I have got a lot to show you. As I say, lots of unknown, or largely unknown outside their native countries, equipment to show you. So without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road as soon as I can find the button that I need to press. And it's this one. Yeah, now now I'm gonna get myself in trouble in just a second, and I'm gonna say good morning to this gentleman here. Let's have a look. Bert. Now, I'm gonna say Gaines. I know it's spelled Gaines. I reckon, because I'm fairly sure Bert is Belgian, I reckon that's probably pronounced Gaines, and there's a reason that I'm slightly nervous now, is because he Bert is from a company called Gebroda Gaines in Belgium, and we're featuring one of their machines. And I put on LinkedIn what was on the show today, and within about 3 seconds, he was looking. I don't know how he did it. I don't know whether whether my post came up and he spotted it. I don't know whether he's got some system working in the background, but he spotted it right away. So, Bert, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show. We'll be showing off your machine. Yours isn't the first up. Yours is actually the second. And I do have, as I say, I'm going to slightly embarrass myself here. I do have a slight problem in that some of the machines that we're mentioning, including I'm going to go for the Nick Mops. It may not be pronounced Nick Mops. Bert, please feel free to correct me. But we've also got another one called a Hunklinger or Hunklinger. Not entirely sure how to pronounce them. I'll let them speak for themselves, but we are going to get to all of those very, very soon. I'll come back. I'll come back in just a moment to the question of the day. Haribo Starmix says, I missed the beginning of the show. I saw a picture of Ozzy Osbourne. I know he sadly passed away. Do you have anything to say about it? Just that it is a sad day for music, for culture, and just as I said at the top of the show, I kind of expected Ozzy to outlive me. Having seen off the quantity of alcohol and drugs that he did in his life, I kind of thought he was impervious to death. So sad news. Anyway, It is Wednesday, the 23rd of July. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. In today's show, and as I say, inspired by Steve Williamson, we're going to be delving deep. If you go fishing, stick with me. When you go fishing, and if you go fishing regularly, you might catch a cod or something, a mackerel or something. But if you dig deeper, if you go down into the depths of the ocean, you never know what you might find. So that's what we're doing today. We're going deep into the ocean of construction equipment. That second cup of coffee was a mistake. And we are going to be looking at some of those machines, including the Hunklinger. That's what I'm going with, a compact wheeled excavator. The Nick Mops. That's the pronunciation I'm going with that which is a compact wheel loader. The trailer-mounted backhoe loader from MK Martin. And we're going to also feature the mighty Hudig, which I'm sure you're all aware of. Plus, in my morning monologue today, for the love of construction. Now, before we move on, let me very quickly remind you of the question of the day, because I know we've had some answers on this. Here we go. Yeah, our question of the day today comes once again from our resident quizmaster. I say resident quizmaster, I've not seen him in the chat so far today, but Mr. Gary Muirhead. His question is this: if you could travel through time, would you go backwards or would you go forwards? And I have to say, I find myself torn on this one. I quite like the idea of traveling back, partly because the clothes were better, but also I think it would be quite useful to know what is about to happen. A lottery win or two would be nice. But there's also a bit of me that quite like a glimpse of what lies ahead, just to see, well, basically to see if humanity actually makes it. Because I'm not entirely convinced it's going to at the moment. But what about you? Would you go back? Would you go forwards? Would you go into the past or the future? Ken Hatcher is going into the future, possibly because he's done and dusted with how the world looks at the moment. Mick says neither, have enough problems living in the present. Fair dues. Jim Taylor says the past. I could undo some mistakes and make a load of wad whilst I'm there. Well, there is, yeah. I mean, it would be nice to go back knowing full well what the lottery results were. That would be quite handy. Have I made any major mistakes? Yes. Could I correct them? I'm damn right I would. So yes, keep those coming in. But it is time to start the show, and we're going to start with a smidgen of this, and then we're going to get into, those lesser-known machines. Back after this. Yeah, we're going to start with a machine called the Hunklinger. It's something like that. Listen, you'll see how it's spelled. It's on the machine. Let me know what you think of this. I was mightily impressed. I was impressed with the machine. I was also impressed with the attachment as well. Take a look. Let me know what you think. kind of feel like that music needed John Thompson to turn to the camera and to go, nice. Yeah. So, many things to get through here. Chris Ford would go backwards in time, as you could alter going forwards. You might not like what you see going forwards, but there is a far more philosophical take on this from our friend Ender. Ender Lee says he would go to the future because it's an old Chinese saying, I realize the past cannot be rectified, yet know the future can still be pursued. Indeed, I have not strayed too far from the right path. Now I perceive what is correct and that yesterday was wrong. Ender, there, that's a tattoo waiting to happen, surely. Yeah. Dan Cullen, impressed with the attachment. Also says, nice little bit of kit. Mick says, bloody hell, the brick cleaners would have cleaned and palleted up 500. Clever, but not my cup of tea. And Dan Cullen saying, I wonder if you can operate that by remote control. Let's be honest, you can operate pretty much anything by remote control now. What's the name of that company? RemoQuip. I'm sure RemoQuip could remote control that. Not a problem at all. And we're doing his question of the day, which he's probably fully aware of now. Mr. Muirhead has arrived. Late, but welcome nonetheless. Morning, Gary. How are you doing, my friend? Good of you to join us. Loads more to get through, but we're going Belgian in just a moment. Belgian, but with no waffle. I will be back with it in just a moment after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, we're continuing our delving through some of the lesser known brands in the world of construction equipment. And this time we are heading for Belgium. We're heading for a company called Gebroda Gaines or Gebroda Gaines. I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce it. They are from Belgium and they make compact wheel loaders that look like this. And I have to say, I, for one, am mightily impressed, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it. And, be kind because one of their company representatives is actually in the chat. So say some nice things. Here we go. Now, my take on that is I like it. One of the things that appealed to me with that is the fact that it looks kind of old-fashioned. Some of the machines have no cab or they've got a canopy, but it's electric. I know one of the things that Jim Turner goes on about with these in these chats a lot is this notion of you can have lots and lots of bells and whistles. You can have all the fancy devices and everything else, but do you necessarily need it? And I think that particularly the larger machine there, I think that is a perfect example. It's electric powered, very, very versatile. I think it does the job. Now, Dan asks a very important question here. Are any of these available in the UK? I don't know about the Hunklinger. I've certainly not seen one over here. But given that we have Mr. Gaines in the chat, Mr. Gaines, Bert, are your machines available here in the UK? I mean, Belgium's not a million miles away. I'm sure you could pop over the channel and bring one back with you on a small trailer. I don't know. Mick says, I like the roll mops part. Yeah, me too. Roll mops is a weird name because roll mops is a way of doing herrings, isn't it? Fairly sure it is. Jim Turner enjoying it as well. Looks a sound bit of kit. Totally agree. Connor's school bus adventures. Okay. We lost a legend in metal. Ozzy Osbourne died yesterday. I will miss him, as will I. As will I. I realise he was chaotic and eccentric, and I realised that he'd done himself enormous harm over the years, but I loved him for it, and he will be sadly missed. Mick, we're talking about the question of the day, which is, would you prefer to go back or forward in time if you were given the chance? Mick says George Santayana. Those who can't remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Dan enjoying the Nick Mops or Nick Mops. I don't know. I don't speak Belgian. I barely speak English. Enjoying the canopy setup. Go back to the question of the day. Dan said, I'd go to the future, but also like to go back in time to correct my wrongdoings. Your wrongdoings, Dan. I think we may need to know more. You may have to save that for the memoirs, though. Gary Muirhead says, sorry, I'm late. This is too easy. This is too easy. It's all going a bit crazy right now on site because Mr. Trump's visit has really put a spanner in the works for us. Donald Trump creating chaos? Surely not. Surely not. That doesn't sound like the sort of thing the big orange twat would do. Yeah. Connor, School of Bus Adventures. I'm going to go and check out this channel. I have Connor. Have you converted a school bus? If you have my unending envy of an evening when I'm done with looking at plants and equipment. One of my favorite ways to unwind on YouTube is to look at van and bus conversions, camping, and people going off into the wilds in converted transit vans and school buses. Connor, I will be checking out your channel immediately after this. Going back to the Nick Mops from Gabroda Gaines. Are there diesel versions? Bert, if you're still listening, I would love to hear from you. Donald Trump has changed the recipe of Coca-Cola, by the way. He has a version with real American sugar. So just, I mean, I don't want to go too far into the political realm. I don't want to go too far off all that we normally talk about here. But there's a war raging in Ukraine. There's a war raging in Gaza. The American economy is crashing, and Donald Trump is changing the recipe of Coca-Cola. He is asking for the Washington Commander football team to be renamed the Washington Redskins, and he is having Stephen Colbert sacked from late night TV. Donald, I know you watch this show a lot. Get your priorities sorted, fella. What are you thinking of now? Going back, Bert Gaines. Bert, thank you so much for this. The Nick Mops are available. We are working on our dealer network. If you're interested, you can contact us. Bert Gaines, meet the audience. Audience, meet Bert Gaines. Go and have a look. They have a lot of stuff on their YouTube channel. I only discovered it last night. Go and take a look. Go and find. I mean, I realised to us Brits that's probably a slightly strange, pronunciation. But go and take a look. Lots of interesting stuff over there. Mick says, little known fact about Ozzy and the thing bit him. Yes, it did. He had to have injections in his stomach just in case of rabies. That is true. And Gary Muirhead said, I heard Kelly Osbourne saying this morning that her dad said his last concert recently was his funeral. I'm really quite sad that Ozzy is no longer amongst us. But if you're going to check out, what better way to do it? Did anyone actually see any of the final outing of Black Sabbath? Where they were supported by the likes of Metallica and Guns N' Roses and stuff. I mean, if Ozzy had sat down and written his own send off, it couldn't have been better. And I did wonder. I was talking to Fred about this last night. You hear these stories about somebody, maybe a father who is terminally ill, but he manages to hang on just long enough to walk his daughter down the aisle and then dies. I kind of get the feeling of that with Ozzy. We all knew he was ill, Parkinson's and a variety of other things. We all knew that he was ill. We all knew that the end was nigh. But I wonder if that final gig, that final get together of Black Sabbath and all these heavy metal mates, I wonder if that had kept him going just long enough for him to say, okay, I'm done, I'm off. Connor's School Bus Adventure says, at this point, will I be able to enjoy my favourite Coca-Cola? It's not going to be the same. No, bearing in mind, I've been around for long enough to remember when Coca-Cola actually changed the recipe. Was it the 80s? They changed the recipe in the 80s and the world went, yeah, not for us, thanks. Change it back. Change it back, damn your eyes. And they did. They changed it back. Donald Trump, sort it out, mate. Sort it out. What are you thinking of? Go and fix a war. Don't worry about the recipe of the Coca-Cola and the name of an American football team, crying out loud. Anyway, we've still got more of the little known to come. And we're going back loaders in just a moment, but not as you know it.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Now, I don't get to spend much time on farms. I know some of you guys do, particularly Jim. The demountable backhoe loader, or the actual backhoe part, I remember it being quite a thing. And then as far as I could tell, it kind of slipped out of fashion, but they're still out there. There's a company called MK Martin who are very keen for you to look at theirs. Who am I to stand in their way?
Discover a revolution in residential landscaping. Introducing the all-new BT810 trailer-mounted compact backhoe by MK Martin. From digging trenches to moving rocks, dirt, and stumps, the BT810 is engineered to tackle a wide array of landscaping and property maintenance jobs where a full-sized excavator won't fit. Designed for ease and convenience, the BT810 trailered compact backhoe is easily towable behind an ATV, UTV, or pickup truck, ensuring you can move from one job to the next without fuss. Forget the constraints of most traditional trailer backhoes. The MK Martin's BT810 offers a full 360-degree rotation, allowing the operator total access to the job at hand. With a digging depth of up to 5 feet and a curved boom design that provides an impressive 6 feet 8 inches of digging range, the BT810 is a powerful excavating tool delivering impressive range and maneuverability. Powered by a 13.5 horsepower electric start Briggs & Stratton engine, the BT810 boasts a digging force of 1,764 pounds, allowing it to meet the rigorous demands of both professionals and enthusiasts alike. The BT810 comes available with either a 12-inch or 18-inch bucket, each with a convenient mechanical thumb. This mechanical thumb is the ideal tool for the precise maneuvering of rocks, logs, or fence posts. Backed by a 1-year limited warranty, contact your local MK Martin dealer today about the all-new BT810 trailer-mounted compact backhoe. MK Martin. Living Country.
So, bit of a mixed reception on that one. Mick says, handy, but not sure I would enjoy moving it by hand in a tight corner. Fair comment. Chris Ford says they're late to the party. Smalley excavators had the Smalley 5 45 years ago. They did indeed. I always felt like the Smalley fell out of fashion too quickly. I realised, it was overtaken by the arrival primarily of the Japanese mini excavators from the likes of Kubota and Komatsu and everything else. But I do wonder. Obviously, as soon as you put things on tracks or on wheels, you've got an additional expense. You've also got a lot more to look after, and a lot more moving parts, a lot more that can go wrong. If your application is right for that, I actually think the Smalley of old or that MK Martin, I think that still has a place. Gary Muirhead says, handy wee bit of kit. Suppose it beats using a shovel. And Dan Cullen says, now that's handy. Colin's School Bus Adventures. I wonder when Caterpillar will release something new. It'll be sometime this week. That's how Caterpillar work. There's always something. Do you know what? I get to the point primarily because they don't always release video, and because some of the updates are not particularly exciting. But if you go to the Caterpillar website, cat.com, go down to the bottom, there's a section there called, I think it's called Press Announcements or Product Announcements. Click on that and see. It's like a daily update of, we've got the 5 series of this, the 6 series of that, the new generation of this, just a constant flow. You'd be astounded just how much Caterpillar releases. Jim Turner says, pair that with a track dumper and you'll get your muck away. Use the dumper to move it around off-road. Yeah. See, I as I say, I'm sure that, I'm positive that would cost you way less than it, to go and invest in a dedicated backhoe loader or a mini excavator. As Jim has said, pair that with a track dumper, you've got yourself a proper earth-moving solution for pretty sensible money. I think there's room for that. Now we've looked at the not the low end, but the more utilitarian end of the market. We're going a bit more luxurious for our final film of the show today, and it will be along immediately after this. So, been trying to think of how to introduce this, and the best I can come up with is this. I think most of us, if we're of the right age, and I know Haribo Star Mix is at school, so maybe not, but most of us own a car, and by and large, a car is a fairly practical, utilitarian thing. Gets us from A to B, and we're quite happy with it. But I think all of us have a secret hankering for something, in the shape of a Bugatti or an Aston Martin. In the world of plant, most of the equipment is utilitarian. It is the Ford and the Kia and the Vauxhall of plant. But over in the plant world, there is also the Bentley, the Aston Martin, the Bugatti, and it looks like this.
We got tons of work ahead of us today. 500-yard ditch, fiber cables, railway sleepers, and last but not least, 50 telephone poles right over there. Power up! Going back
do love the hooding, I have to say. Going back to Jim's comment about the MK Martin, the trailer-mounted backhoe, he says, just stick the bucket in the skip and off you trundle. Yeah, a bit like how they work with the Sleipner system. Bucket in the back of a dump truck and off you trundle with your excavator on wheels. Exactly the same thing. Well said, Jim. Dan, I don't know how I missed this. He says, you missed my Guinness comment. We were talking about Guinness and splitting the G and Ulrika Johnson and stuff. He says that he can drink a pint of Guinness in 2.5 seconds. Now, Dan is Irish. I think genetically and historically he is predisposed to drinking Guinness. But Dan, I think we need video evidence of that. Last time you and I met, you were, I think you were on the tea or the coffee or something like that. Next time you and I meet up, pint of Guinness, I'll buy and I'll record it. I would like to see a pint of Guinness disappear in 2.5 seconds. Chris Ford, going back to our hooding lady shouting power up. Don't think I'd last long in her gang. Reminds me of the wife barking orders. Yes, indeed. Dan says, my Rolls Royce machine. If I had the money, it would be a Liebherr, De Vallon or Kobelco. And going back to the hooding again, we had one on demo, says Gary. You had on a Q2S rail, but we found it very expensive. They are not cheap. They're fantastic, but they're not cheap. And Haribo Star Mix is questioning the downing of a pint of Guinness in 2.5 seconds. That's impossible, he says. Listen, you've not met Dan. All bets are off when it comes to Dan Cullen. But Dan, I do think we need some video evidence. I'm happy to film it when I get back off my hollybobs, but if you would care to hand your phone to one of your colleagues, down a pint of Guinness after hours, not at work, do it after hours and film yourself doing that in 2.5 seconds without speeding up the film, I might add. We'd love to see it. I'd give you your own spot here on the show. Anyway, people, that's about it for the main part of this morning show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. I look back at my morning monologues of late and found a common theme of negativity. So today's is way more upbeat, way more in defense of the mighty demolition and construction industry. So if you can't stick around for that, please stay safe, look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. I hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I shall return after this. Let's start with a simple question. Why does the demolition and construction industry get such a bad press? Why is it in a world built quite literally by people in hard hats, high-vis vests and steel-toed boots that those very same people are so often overlooked, undervalued, or outright disrespected? It's a strange contradiction because without this industry, there would be no hospitals, no schools, no houses, no supermarkets, stadiums or roads, no high-rises or railways, not even the power stations or the data centres that keep our lives ticking. Demolition and construction are not a necessary evil to tolerate and to castigate. They are the foundations, and that pun was absolutely intended. They are the foundations of everything that modern life depends upon. So why then is this industry so often on the receiving end of public skepticism, media criticism, and even political indifference? There are more than 2.5 million people working in construction. I'm going to do that bit again because I've tripped up. There are more than 2.5 million people working in construction-related roles across the UK. That's around 7% of the entire national workforce. The sector contributes more than £130 billion to the UK economy each year, accounting for roughly 6% of total GDP. And when you factor in demolition, waste management, material supply, equipment manufacture, and the countless businesses supporting the supply chain, that number rises significantly. This industry is big, it's vital, and it's everywhere. Sadly, however, the love for construction is less common, less easy to find. In fact, it often feels like there's a global conspiracy to make the industry look bad. Why is it that when a new movie wants to depict chaos, They immediately show images of collapsing buildings and screaming construction workers. Why is it that when a journalist wants to write about risk, recklessness, or poor health and safety, the example they reach for is a building site? And why is it that in careers fairs up and down the country, construction is presented as a last resort for those who didn't get their grades? Let's explore a few possible answers. First, risk. Construction, and especially demolition, does carry inherent danger. Heavy machinery, heights, confined spaces, structural instability. The risks are real, and unfortunately, when something goes wrong, it often goes very wrong. Every serious incident makes the news. Every fatality rightly sparks outrage. But here's the thing the news headlines always overlook. This industry doesn't shy away from risk, it manages it. Modern demolition and construction sites are governed by some of the strictest safety regulations in the world. We have risk assessments and method statements, exclusion zones, PPE protocols, and site specific inductions that put many other industries to shame. Yet that work, those daily acts of care, diligence, and prevention, rarely make the headlines. Disaster sells, discipline doesn't. Then there's the issue of working conditions. Let's be honest, construction is tough. It's muddy, noisy, cold in the winter, and boiling hot in the summer. There's rain, there's wind, sometimes there's snow. There are delays and frustrations, and an endless stream of logistics and labour. And while most of the country clocks off at 5 o'clock or heads inside when it rains, demolition and construction workers are still out there, pouring concrete, erecting steel, operating machinery. Maybe that's part of the issue. Maybe the discomfort and difficulty of the job has made it seem less appealing, less aspirational in a world that increasingly values the clean, the digital, and the remote. But does hard mean less? Should physical labour be looked down upon just because it involves sweat instead of spreadsheets? We celebrate Olympic athletes for their physical feats, but mock construction workers for theirs. It's a hypocrisy we don't talk about anywhere near enough. And what about perception? What about the cultural caricatures? The wolf whistling builder, the lazy labourer, the backstreet cowboy with no paperwork and a rusty van. These tired old tropes linger like asbestos in your attic. They're outdated and they're damaging because today's industry is highly skilled, highly technical, and highly regulated. Contrary to what the public are often told, this is not an industry stuck in the past. It's one that's building the future, literally. And yet, as a society, we've become dangerously disconnected from the work behind the walls around us. We live in homes someone else built. We drive on roads that someone else laid. We heal in hospitals that someone else constructed. And we don't give it a second thought. It's as if we've lost sight of where buildings actually came from. They're made block by block, beam by beam, by real people with real skill, real knowledge, and real pride. And maybe that's what this monologue is really all about. Pride. Pride this industry takes in its work, and the pride it deserves in return. Because, yes, there are still challenges. There are still some rogue operators who cut corners, some employers who exploit their workforce, and some conditions that fall short. No industry is perfect. But the vast majority of construction and demolition professionals are doing honest work, skilled work under demanding conditions to incredibly high standards. And they rarely get the recognition they deserve. Instead, we hear politicians praising job creators in tech and finance. We see TV shows glamorizing the hustle of office life. We hear school teachers telling kids to aim for university rather than ending up on a site. But here's the truth that newspapers, politicians, and teachers will not tell you. There's dignity in labour. There's honour in building. There is heroism in hard hats. And we should be teaching that. We should be celebrating that. We should be showing children that working in construction is not a fallback. It's a future and a rewarding one. The demolition and construction industry deserves better than bad press. It deserves our gratitude. There's my morning monologue done. Well, I've got 2 more to cook up between now and Friday. But that's one for today. Let's go back here. Hang on a minute. Going back to the downing of a pint of Guinness in 2.5 seconds, Dan Collins says, nothing's impossible. He's throwing down the gauntlet. Connor's school bus adventures have a good day, but he also says, and to answer your question, I don't own a bus or a converted one. I hope to in the near future. I currently take photos and videos of school buses. I'm going to look at your channel nonetheless. Looking forward to seeing that. Chris Ford says, on a serious side, when a man says he's going to do the job, he doesn't need reminding every 3 months. One of my dad's old mates, Pete, one of my dad's fishing mates, worked at Heathrow Airport. He actually took me on Concorde once. This is obviously, I was a young child. It was way, way, way before 9/11. And Concorde didn't actually go anywhere, but he invited me along for the day and we got to go on Concorde, stood still. But Pete was terrible at DIY, and him and his wife moved into a new house, or an older house, and he started the renovation. And he took up part of the floor in their kitchen. And that's how it stayed for about 7 years. And I bumped into Pete and his wife Heather at my dad's funeral, and they were telling me a story. Heather's mum, so Pete's mother-in-law, long since passed away, and her favourite photograph of her mother was actually taken in their kitchen. But if you look closely, I mean, apparently the photograph has captured the mother perfectly. But if you look in the background, there's actually a pipe just suspended in midair behind her head because he never got around to fixing it. Yeah, that's the real thing. Andy Thornton says, what does he say? A pint of Guinness in 2.5 seconds is like a broken pencil. Pointless. Well done, sir. You've got to savour a good pint of the dark stuff. I agree. I agree. Haribo Star Mix. That's true. Nothing is impossible, but 2.5 seconds is a short time. Yeah, I'm probably down for about 10 minutes. Pint of Guinness these days. I'm out of practice. What can I tell you? What have we got here? There you are, Jim Turner. Write this on a big billboard. I make more than a lot of ex-university bods, work less hours, have no student debt, and I'm in a job where we can have a right good crack every day. Yeah. Those of you that are, let me think, where are we in the yeah, I mean, there will be people. In fact, I'm probably a bit too late. I'm out of touch with school holidays now that my children are no longer at school. But I would imagine there are lots and lots of people at the moment. They've left school, they've done their final exams, or they are currently doing their final. No, they've probably done their final exams, and they are now looking forward, sort of, to joining the world of work. Heed those wise words from Jim Turner. Earn more than going to university, work less hours, no student debt, and you get to have a bit of a giggle with your mates as well. If you are the type of person that is looking for a job, you're 16, 17, heed the words of the mighty Jim Turner, for he speaketh the truth. Jim Turner says, which would be great, but I go and do another 4 to 6 hours after that. Yeah, well, true. Dan says, wow, now that's it. A note with me. Very true and very well written. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Jim says, they're on the wrong sites. We clock off at 4 and 3 p.m. on Fridays. Yeah. And then go and do some more digging on your own land, I would imagine. I do believe that as an industry, we have surrendered the narrative. I think it's largely been taken from us, but I do think we gave it up too easily. I think we've allowed ourselves in demolition and construction and the trades in general to be portrayed in a pretty poor way. One of the areas that I have an issue with is a thing that I've called implied jeopardy. So whenever you see proper demolition depicted on the TV, in a documentary style, it's never a case of here's a building, it needs to come down, We've handed it to the experts, and the experts will make it happen. What they actually say is, here's a building that has to come down, and it's against the clock, and there's so much danger. It could collapse at any moment, and the people walking by have no idea of the danger they're in. Bullshit. It's nonsense. It's a complete fiction. And I have to say, I find it exceptionally annoying because I was even named as an executive producer on one particular series. And I was approached by a company. I think they were a British company, but they actually had an Australian presenter. And I made it very clear that I would only be involved if they did away with all of that. If they would just present demolition being done by experts in their field, they assured me they would. They went to various sites up and down the country and so on down the line. And then by the time it was edited, it was exactly that. This bridge could collapse at any moment. Oh, the guys are in such grave danger, but they're fuck off. Fuck off. No, they're not. They've planned this for months and months and months. They've done dozens, hundreds of these. It's the same as this, and I realise this is a harder one to fix. And the idea I mentioned it in the narrative there, this idea of the wolf whistling builder. Yeah, maybe in an old Benny Hill sketch from the 70s, but now, really, do you think? I don't know. As I say, I feel like we've surrendered the narrative, and even within our own industry, when you think about demolition, I think demolition is seen as it is a necessary evil. I'll hurry up and get that nonsense out of the way. Never mind the nonsense. Just get that building out of the way, and then the real work can start. Screw you, because taking a building down requires every bit as much skill, if not a little bit more, than putting one up. Haribo Starmix says, I'd love to get into the army. It doesn't have a great payment, but you also have no student debts. And since I live in the Netherlands, where the houses are just too expensive, I will live with my parents. So that means I don't need to pay rent or food. Well figured out. I've still got two of my children living at home in their 30s for precisely the same reason. Yeah, good point. Yeah, as I say, I do feel like we've surrendered the narrative. When was the last time? I mean, even if you think about a soap opera. I mean, I don't watch them, but you think about a soap opera like an EastEnders or a Coronation Street. I'm sure there are others, but not really my game. But I guarantee if somebody is, let's take EastEnders because I can do the accent better. If there's a somebody in the building trade or the demolition trade or the waste trade in the within the EastEnders cast, I can already predict that he will be portrayed probably as the lovable rogue, but he's verging on the criminal. He's as daft can be. He's as thick as two short planks. He has his arse hanging out of his jeans, and he speaks like a cockney. Because apparently that's how construction and demolition, everyone's the same. They're all vaguely crooked. They're all as stupid as anything, and they all have their arse hanging out. Do you really think that somebody can run a multi-million pound demolition or construction company if they are stupid? Do you? And if you go to any of the higher ranking events within the demolition industry, trust me, arse hanging out your jeans is not the way. There are some very, very sharply dressed people within the demolition industry. John Woodward, I'm looking at you as being the sharpest dressed of all. Truth be told, have a great day, stay safe, and stay awesome. Connor, I fully intend to stay awesome, for I know no other way. Chris Ford says, bullshit maybe, but people wouldn't watch the truth. I think it's called journalism or poetic license. Journalism, I have to defend my own. And funnily enough, I've written a piece today. I don't know how aware you all are at the moment. There's a late night TV show host in the States called Stephen Colbert. He's on the Late Show. And although they've claimed otherwise, the company that owns the Late Show, CBS, has basically bowed to political pressure from the big orange fella. And they are closing the Late Show after 30 plus years, and they are firing Stephen Colbert. Which has raised a lot of eyebrows. The absolute truth is, I was there 10 years ago, not at the Late Show. Everything that Stephen Colbert is going through at the moment, cancel culture, the powers that be ostracizing him and blackballing him and everything else, that was me. That was me in the NFTC 10 years ago, or more than 10 years ago. Exactly the same thing. I've written about it for today, actually. Can I share that with you? I probably can, as it happens. Let me have a look. Just because, I was doing nothing this morning apart from getting ready to do this show. There you are. I'll put the link. I'm going to call it Stephen Colbert. And the link is in the chat right now. If you fancy a bit of light reading after the show, then you can go and do that. The press and media as a whole will only show and print what they like. Present company excluded, I hasten to add. There was a time, and I don't think we're entirely past that time, but there was a time when I would have grudgingly agreed with that. But I do believe we are now living in an age where it's not printing what they like, it's printing what those in power like. The pro-Israeli stance of the BBC, for example, the fact that the Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post in America, chose not to back up Kamala Harris and decided to tread a fine line, although he then pitched up at Donald Trump's inauguration, second time around. And when you look at Stephen Colbert being fired, cancelled, blackballed because of things that he said about Donald Trump, I think we are living in a different age. We're living in a different age. And yes, Andy Thornton says, got to go see you tomorrow. Don't be careful, be competent. And there is a message there. That's something that I do think is often overlooked, particularly in media circles. It's risky. Do you not think they've done it before? It's like saying, so let's go back 15 years. England are playing in the World Cup, and we win a free kick, maybe 25 yards out. David Beckham is about to step up. And the commentator says that David Beckham is about to take a free kick. This could go anywhere. The people in the crowd to the right and to the left are in enormous danger because when he hits this ball, it could go anywhere. There is no predicting what will happen in the next 10 seconds. When we all know that when David Beckham steps up to take a free kick, it is going one place and one place only. It's going in the back of the bleeding net. That is demolition construction. It is not a surprise to us. It's not something we've not encountered before. It's something that we do all the livelong day. Surrender the narrative. Jim says, yes, I'm scruffy. I didn't think so. Shorts and a vest and a pair of boots. It's all the rage at the moment, Jim. I'm probably not saint material, but as being thick, definitely not. But I have next to no academic qualifications. My handwriting is terrible, and I'm partially dyslexic. And I've stumbled over the word dyslexic. So I've mentioned it before. The owner of TDS Demolition, Tony Tapparell, dyslexic, drives a Rolls Royce, earns a fortune, not a problem. And that notion of being thick, I have personal issue with that, because my old employer, back when I was actually employed and not, rowing my own canoe. Back when I was employed, we went through a period where my employer, Reed Business Publishing, as was, declared that henceforth they would only employ those with university degrees. So as a result, I was one of the very few in Contract Journal, Plant Managers Journal, International Construction that didn't have a university degree. I worked with some really, really nice people, but they barely had any common sense between them. Yes, they had letters after their name. Yes, they'd drunk themselves silly at university for 3 years, but they were as daft as a box of frogs. Haribo Stomach says, "Trust me, my handwriting is even worse. I'm still getting good grades." Yeah, listen, if you could see my handwriting, which you probably can a bit there, it's not good. It's not good. The only person that needs to understand my handwriting, however, is me. And by and large, I can. But with the advent of the mobile phone and, more importantly, the voice recorder facility, I don't even take notes anymore. I just record the whole damn thing, transcribe it. Don't have to worry about handwriting. Mick says, "Going to warn you now, mate. If we do meet up with Dan and he thinks he's going to down a pint like that, it'll be a short meeting, I can tell you." Yeah. Chris Ford says, "Sorry, Mark, not digging. There's a lot of shit going on about cancel culture, etc. A lot of people only want to hear their views." One of the biggest dangers, I think, of the modern world, and certainly modern media, social media, is the way in which it plays to the crowd. So I don't need to point out the fact that I am fairly liberal in my views, fairly left leaning in my views. If I were on Facebook, which I'm not as a person, I'm there as Demolition News, but if I were there as a person, I would be served liberal, left-leaning political content, because that's what I've looked for. That's what I've watched for more than 30 seconds, a minute, an hour. That's what I've consumed in the past, so it will serve me more of the same. And it cuts both ways, and I realise there is this temptation to talk about the cult of Donald Trump, and I do think there is a degree of that. But I also think a lot of that is driven by, if you are right-leaning and American, and you watch YouTube or you watch Facebook, the algorithm is watching what you're watching, and it will serve you more of the same. And if you go down a path of right leaning, it will serve you more right leaning. And maybe as it serves you more right leaning, it will show you more extreme right leaning. So suddenly you've gone from I lean slightly to the right to all of a sudden I believe conspiracy theories and I believe Donald Trump should be named king. It's not a big leap. The crazy thing is with media, and I will come back to demolition and construction in a moment. The crazy thing with it is we now have at our disposal in the modern day and age more information, more data, more insight than at any time in human history. But because that information is deliberately siloed and served to us by Twitter, X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, you end up, it's not even a one-sided argument. It's like the other side doesn't even exist. You have one viewpoint and it reinforces all that you already believe. And I do think that is a danger. Chris Ford says, "I like the names of people you're using. Maybe I ought to change mine. I thought about not the man that can, more like the man that can, the hunt that can't." I get what you're saying. I worked with a guy who came out of college straight out to site as a manager. On his first day week, I put him in his place. Everything he wanted done was by the book. We've all seen the meme, haven't we? I don't know how to do your job, but my book tells me you're doing it wrong. We've all seen that. And it is common. Mick is on his way out the door. Stay safe, gents. The hound needs to cock his leg, and I need to practice my downing of Guinness. Catch you all later. There could be a race coming up. Jim says, "I got disillusioned at school as they talked too slowly and wanted me to write it all down." Fuck that. I store information in my head, not a book, so I stopped going so much. Kids shouldn't be tested on coursework, only on a regular test to see how clever they are. These are really hurting today. I'll take them out. I enjoyed my time at school. Make no bones about it. I really did enjoy my time at school. all I would say is that the way that the education is skewed. I mean, because I studied English and I specifically studied English literature, I was force fed Dickens and Shakespeare and the like, which, because they were force fed to me, I hated. And it probably took me about another 20 years to shake off that hangover to the point where I was willing to go and pick up a book of, Shakespeare or Dickens or whoever, and then actually enjoy it for what it was. You can't force feed education. Because, as a human being, you will throw up the barriers. I totally agree with you there, Jim. Because I knew his employer, I went straight to him and said, "You need to knock sense into that guy before a bucket does." Nice one. Connor says, "So, Mark, what's the next demolition underway?" Well, demolition is going on all the time, but I will tell you, I very quickly, I did have a thing here from my mate Mike Woof, when I can find it. Yeah, apparently there is a bridge between Iowa and Wisconsin called the Black Hawk Bridge. Apparently just been given the nod to be taken down. Spans the Mississippi River and links Iowa with Wisconsin. Going to be carried out later this year. The bridge connects Iowa Highway 9 and Wisconsin Highway 82. If you would like to know more about that, go and have a look at globalhighways.com. Thank you very much indeed for that, Mike. Dan said he was arrogant and stupid. It was unbelievable. We had no clue about the construction industry. I think construction is. I'm going to throw this one up because it's related to the same thing. Dan, no doubt he had a black hat. Yeah, absolutely. We had the same thing in journalistic circles. We had a guy. I mean, I kind of looked up to a lot of the people that I work with, particularly on Contract Journal. Our editor and our deputy editor were both fully qualified civil engineers who had basically left their job and brought their expertise into the world of journalism. I had no problem with that, but we had a guy join us straight out of university and, insisted that he had the letters after his name on his business card. Even those that outranked him didn't do that, but he insisted on it. And literally, I mean, you basically had to tell him to eat lunch. It was like he'd landed from another planet. He had no idea of the real world at all. Dan says I was the same. I never enjoyed school. Always preferred outside of the farm, than to fishing, the Atlantic, to construction. Love every second of it. It's something that Jim touches on quite a lot. I would back him up 100%. I think if you can expose young people to demolition and construction, I do think there will be no turning back for some of them. I think some of them would go, "Oh yeah, that's a bit of me." There's a very famous story about David Bowie. I realise David Bowie doesn't necessarily belong in discussions about demolition and construction, but David Bowie was an arty sort of type, and he went to see the Rolling Stones and saw Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, and literally was like, That's what I want to do. I want me a piece of that." I think we would have exactly the same if we were to expose young people to demolition and construction. Show them the camaraderie, show them the banter and the crack, show them the equipment, show them the excitement, show them the reward that comes with taking down a building safely or putting one up safely. Show them that. And, if you took a class of 40 children to a demolition or construction site, the chances are some of them would go, "Yep, count me in. As soon as I've got out of school, I want a piece of that." Bert Gaines says, "Thank you for your interest in our product. If you're interested in the Gabroda Gaines Nick Mops, you can always contact us." Bert, I'll drop your line after the show. But thank you very much indeed for being here. Really appreciate you taking part, and love your equipment. Next time I'm in Belgium, I can't think when that will be, but the next time I'm in Belgium, I will drop you a line and maybe I'll come along and bring my son with the camera, and maybe we'll do a bit of filming with you guys as well. But thank you very much indeed for being here. Anyway, people, I've got 2 more shows to prepare before I go off and do my thing. Haribo Star Mixer just said, "I don't like school, but who does?" Me, I loved school. I saw school a bit like we're talking about with construction, and the camaraderie and the crack and the banter that goes with it. As far as I was concerned, when I was going to school, I was basically going to hang out with my mates. Yes, there were lessons, it helped that I was quite good at some of them, but I was lessons kind of got in the way. But basically, I used to go to school to play football with my mates. I listen. I'd happily go back, and don't even get me started on school dinners. Love me a school dinner. Jim Turner says, um, "If ever I've got the time and the money, I'll start a scouts type organisation. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Wouldn't that? What was the scouts fellow's name? Is it Baden Powell? Imagine Jim Turner became the new Baden Powell. Hordes of young men and women wearing woggles and doing construction under the banner of the mighty Jim Turner. Listen, I'm all about it. I think that's a great idea. Anyway, people, 2 more shows to go before I go and leave you to your own devices. Don't do anything that I wouldn't do. I'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. for yet more of the same. We won't be having the company of Haribo Star Mix 244 because he's going on his hollybobs. Have a great time, bon voyage and all of that. But I'll be back here tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Until then, everybody, have a fine and splendid day. Look after yourselves. See you soon. All the best.